Story 1 by Reddit user NateRichards47. I had totally forgotten about this story until my girlfriend reminded me of it a couple of days ago. I started dating my girlfriend at the end of my senior year, and before we started dating, I used multiple dating apps. In many of my dating app profiles, I had my Snapchat listed so that people could add me. This is important. Nothing led to anything with the dating apps. I talked to people for a bit, and eventually the conversation would die out. When I began dating my girlfriend, I had deleted the apps but never deleted my account, meaning people could still see my profile and my Snapchat in it. I'd realized this after a few people would add me, but it didn't go anywhere because I'd tell them I had a girlfriend. As you would imagine, the conversation would end there. But there was this one guy that added me. Let's call him Adam, and he asked me if I was available. Being straight, I was used to guys adding me, so I gave him the usual response. Sorry, I'm straight, and I have a girlfriend. I expected him to leave me alone, but he didn't. At first, the messages were normal. How was your day? What did you do today? Simple stuff like that. Being the nice guy I am, I responded because I thought this guy just wanted to be friends, and having a gay friend is okay with me. Then the messages progressively got more creepy. He started asking questions about my girlfriend, and not the basic questions. Questions like, do you guys have sex a lot? Or, does she think you're good in bed? I simply responded with, those are kind of personal questions, and I don't feel it's right for me to share my dating business. Adam would always apologize and not talk to me for a few days. Then he would hit me up again and ask creepy questions. I eventually told my girlfriend about the situation. And for those who don't know, my girlfriend is super sweet, but she is also very aggressively protective over me. So she adds this guy and basically tells him that he needs to leave me alone. Unfortunately, this enraged Adam, who responded with saying that, I need to dump this bitch now because she is a c. Naturally, I defend my girlfriend and block Adam. Everything was cool for a week, until another account added me. This guy's name was Tyler, and he was super chill. He was super nice to me and respected my relationship with my girlfriend. As the days go by, I start to notice that Tyler's vocabulary is very similar to Adam's. I wasn't sure about it, so I didn't make any assumptions that it was him. So, I gave Tyler's snap to my girlfriend, who adds him to investigate. As soon as she adds Tyler's snap, Tyler flips out on her, which confirmed that it was Adam. As soon as this realization is made, I block him again. From here, everything goes quiet from Adam for about a month. So I live in the suburbs of Chicago, and both my girlfriend and I live down the street from each other. So naturally, we do see each other a lot, and both our families are really good friends. On top of that, our families would also house sit or pet sit for each other. Anyway, a month goes by until I get a letter with no address or name on it. Just my name on the front. I open it, and to my shock and horror, it is basically a love letter from Adam. The premise of the letter was basically him saying that he loves me and he wants me to run off with him. The letter also takes a very sexual turn halfway through, with him describing what he wants me to do to him, and him to do to me. At this moment, two horrifying realizations hit me. One is that he knows my address, and two, he dropped that letter off himself, meaning that he is in my town. I immediately call my girlfriend, who is equally as shocked as I am, and after consulting with my parents, we call the cops. Unfortunately, since I had blocked as well as removed Adam's social media information, and that the letter had no return address, there was nothing we could do about it. Day after day, letters would keep appearing in my mailbox, until they also started appearing in my girlfriend's mailbox as well. Her letters were far worse than mine. Adam wrote of how much he hated her and how much he wanted to hurt her. He also stated many times of the ways he would inflict pain on her until she broke up with me. Like me, she took this to the cops, and again, they could do nothing about it. My girlfriend's family had plans to go to Hawaii for vacation, and I was to house sit for them. The first couple of days went fine until one of the last nights of the week. As per usual, I was over at their house, watching TV on the couch, when the power went out. Mind you, it was around 1 a.m., and it was pitch black when the lights went out. The next few seconds were silent when I heard a window smash from the office. To understand this more, let me give you a layout of the house. When you enter the front door, to your left was the living room. Straight ahead was both the kitchen and the stairs, and to the right was the office and the dining room. On the upstairs level, as soon as you reached the top of the stairs, a bathroom was straight ahead, and my girlfriend's room was on the right and the other bedrooms were on the left. Immediately, I shot up, grabbed a kitchen knife, and ran upstairs to hide while I called the cops. I quickly got into my girlfriend's room and slipped into the closet. As soon as I was able to contact the operator, I heard the pounding of the intruder running up the steps. Thankfully, I had relayed all the information to the operator in time, who then stayed on the phone as we both remained quiet. The intruder took a left when he reached the top of the stairs, which gave more time for the cops to arrive and for me to get ready just in case I needed to defend myself. A few minutes go by until I heard the intruder start walking toward my girlfriend's room. In the only few precious seconds I had, I slipped out of the closet and positioned myself next to the door. As soon as he opened the door and started to enter the room, I took the kitchen knife and drove it into his shoulder. A young man screamed in pain as I heard a heavy metallic object make a large thud as it hit the ground. From there, I bolted out of the house, where I was met by 4 squad cars and cops with their guns raised. I threw my hands up, shouting that he was upstairs in the room on the right. A few minutes go by, and the intruder was dragged out, still screaming in pain. With the siren lights flooding the street, I got a glimpse of his face. It was Adam, and I was informed later by an officer that the metallic thud that was made was him dropping a handgun. Adam was from Texas, and he had traveled to my state to be with me. He had rented a room at a local motel and would put letters in both my girlfriend's and my mailboxes daily. He would do this in the early hours of the morning, which was confirmed by the security footage of the motel he was staying at. That night, Adam had planned to kill my girlfriend and her family, so I would choose to be with him. He'd managed to pry open the power box to switch off the power to her house along with the neighboring houses, and broke in with the intent of her being there. Well, unfortunately for him, she was enjoying a tropical vacation. To be honest, I have no idea how this outcome would be different if they did not go on that vacation. I am grateful that I still have my girlfriend as well as her family alive. So Adam, please stay the away from my girlfriend and me. Before I continue to the next story, I just want to say thank you for choosing to watch this video, and I hope you're enjoying my narration. If you are, please show your appreciation by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and commenting on this video. It really helps me out. Story 2 by Reddit user Data's Copilot. So I've been reading many stories in this sub lately, and was reminded of a strange encounter I had around 4 years ago. This is my first post ever, so I am sorry if I make any mistakes, and also, English is not my first language, so please excuse my spelling and grammar errors. I, being a 23-year-old female, was born in a small town in the middle of nowhere and raised to always be polite to everyone, engage in conversation if someone wants to, and not to make a scene in public, but rather always handle things quietly to never disturb anyone else. This might work in a small town where everyone knows everybody, and nobody really is a threat. But when I moved to a big city to get my bachelor's degree, I soon had to learn that being nice and always answering everyone might not be the best way to go in every case. This particular encounter happened in my second week in the new city when I was at the mall to get a few clothes and supplies, since I basically moved with nearly nothing. Always being surrounded by a large group of strangers was a new thing for me, and to be honest, quite intimidating at first, but I soon felt comfortable with the anonymity it provided. That was until this particular day, when I noticed someone was staring at me. Not just looking, but really staring and slightly smiling. I was 19 at the time, and maybe not ugly, but definitely not someone that got regularly stared at. Not to say that it's okay to stare at anybody, because it's almost always inappropriate and creepy, but you get what I mean. So, I didn't really know how to react, since it was a kind of attention I'd never gotten before. The guy was probably in his late 20s and looked pretty normal, but still, it made me uncomfortable and self-conscious. I subtly tried to check if my zipper was open, or my makeup was smudged, and if maybe that could be the reason he looked at me. After I ruled out these possibilities and arrived on the upper floor of the mall, I decided to just ignore him and get my stuff done. Well, that premise soon failed, as he managed to cut me off right as I was about to enter a store. He introduced himself, let's call him Steve for this story, and told me that he thought I was pretty and wanted to get to know me. I told him I wasn't interested since I got strange vibes from him, so I politely told him that I was flattered, but not interested. Steve then got very pushy about it. He insisted he would buy me coffee, and afterwards I could still turn him down, and how could I possibly say I wasn't interested if I didn't give him a chance? I tried to say no a few more times, but he just kept trying to convince me, until I decided to let him buy me coffee, because I hoped it would be easier to get out of it after he got his way. I know that this must be absolutely frustrating to read, because it is as frustrating to write it, but just the way I was raised and the sheer anxiety led me to believe this was the only solution, and that everyone just always has the best in mind, and that maybe he was even right. Looking back, I was incredibly naive and just plain stupid. So, if you're screaming at your screen right now, just know that I do too, and I've since learned and know better. So, we went to the mall's McDonald's to get coffee, and I soon began to realize that this decision was stupid. He let me lead the way, following closely, so even if I tried, at this point there was no possible way to discreetly vanish into the crowd. It wouldn't have felt much different if he had a gun to my back, I thought at that moment. So, we got our coffees, sat down at our table far away from the entrance, but not too far in the back, so the bathroom was still in the other direction than the entrance. Plan B, to just quickly go to the bathroom, but actually leave, was now impossible too, since he had a good view of the bathroom doors from his seat. So, we sat there and talked. Actually, he talked, and I quietly drank my coffee. It was as awkward as it could possibly be. I tried to be hella boring so he would just lose any interest, just randomly giving short answers and being on my phone, sending my location to a friend of mine, just in case, and scrolling through Facebook. Steve wasn't irritated by my behavior and kept on talking about how he was only in the city for some weeks because of his work, and about stuff he did in his job. I didn't get all of it because we weren't from the same country, and he spoke with a very heavy accent, and I also didn't really pay attention to anything. He seemed sort of genuine though, not necessarily as if he had bad intentions, just generally very pushy. So, at one point I make a huge mistake to giggle about something I saw on my phone, and when he asked, I showed him the post on Facebook. This gets relevant later on. When I had finished my cup, I excused myself, thanked Steve for the coffee, but I told him I still wasn't interested. I still thought that being nice about it was the best way to get rid of him as quick as possible, without making him angry or something. The last thing I wanted was to cause a scene, or to make the situation even more uncomfortable. So, I made my way to the exit when he gently but firmly grabbed my arm and started to walk beside me to the exit, while telling me we should exchange numbers and ask what my plans were for the rest of the day. At this point, my mood started shifting from uncomfortable to afraid. Unfortunately, my instinct in critical situations is neither fight nor flight, but more like prey animal heart attack. So, I froze and said the first thing that came to my mind after looking around for a second. Opposite to the McDonald's was a huge bookstore that stretched over 2 floors and had a huge space on both of them. From an earlier visit, I had seen the layout of the store before and knew there were a lot of corners and shelves where you could easily and quickly get out of someone's sight. And also, it was fairly crowded at that time of day. So I told Steve, still nice and nonchalantly, that my favourite author had published a new book recently and that I couldn't wait to get it, so I was going to visit the new bookstore. Steve answered something along the lines of, "Great, let's go there. I haven't read a good book for way too long," and he told me he would pay for mine. So, we entered the bookstore and I sort of looked around, read some descriptions, encouraged him to also look around, but he wouldn't leave my side. I tried to distract him by giving him the books I had looked at, so that he would have to look at them and put them back on the shelf, all while I had already moved to the next shelf. I did this in an always increasing speed until I noticed he couldn't keep up any longer and was visibly confused and a little overwhelmed. And as soon as he paid more attention to the books than me, I booked it. Pun absolutely intended. Out of there. I ran through the store, hiding behind bookshelves, peeking out and checking if he'd followed me, simultaneously feeling like a super cool secret agent and the biggest idiot of all time. At one point, I could actually see him moving quickly through the store looking for me. I arrived at the counter in the back of the store where you can pick up reserved books, and as the girl was working there saw me, I just said, "Someone's following me." Without missing a beat, she opened the little door that led behind the counter and, with a movement of her hand, told me to get inside. So I did, and I ducked under the counter and tried not to make a single sound. The employee continued working as normal and actually seemed as if there were scared little girls sitting under her desk hiding from creeps all the damn time. After a while, she casually said, 5'11", short, dark brown hair, brown eyes, flannel and jeans. And I needed a moment to realize that she was talking to me and describing Steve. So I nodded, and she told me he was here some minutes ago, obviously looking for something, but she just saw him leave through the front door, which she could see in the distance. She also told me how she got bad vibes from him and instantly knew it was him who was following me, and that I could stay until I felt safe. I took the offer, and we talked a bit. Just small talk really, about how our days were, and she recommended some of her favourite books. When I actually got up from under the counter, I actually bought one of the books she recommended, and some weeks later read it, and loved it. When I went home, I was always looking around carefully since I was still trembling from the earlier adrenaline and afraid someone could start following me. Or Steve was still around somewhere and actually found me again. The anonymity of the city no longer gave me comfort but made me anxious. I desperately wanted someone around that I knew and who could give me the feeling of safety again. But I really didn't know anybody there yet. So I called my best friend just to talk to her and finally tell her about the reason I sent my location earlier. Later that day, on Facebook, I had a new friend request and many messages in my inbox. My stomach turned when I read the name Steve, and I realized he must have found me by my profile picture or something else he saw earlier on my phone when I showed him a post. You can be sure I blocked him instantly, locked my door extra carefully that night, and didn't close my eyes for a minute. I didn't hear from him again until I saw him almost a year later, on the bus I take on my way home every day. Actually, I noticed him the same way I did the first time in the mall. I felt him staring and smiling at me. He tried to get through to me, walked beside me when I got off the bus and talked to me. But this time, I ignored him and told the next huge guy that crossed my way that Steve was harassing me. Thankfully, only a glance of that guy and the fact that I didn't let this be a private issue but made it sort of public by involving a third party was enough to scare Steve off. I still didn't know if it was a coincidence that he was on the same bus as me, or if he somehow got to know what district I lived in. But I never saw him again. This time, for good. Was he trying to harm me? Did he have bad intentions? Or did he just try to make a friend and had absolutely no clue on how to do so? I don't know, but luckily there are a few things I do know now, after our being in that situation. 1. I have spoken about this encounter a few times, but I always made it out to be this funny story where some guy followed me and I had to hide behind a counter in a bookstore to get rid of him. It's just how I deal with scary things. I make them funny. And people always laugh. But this is not funny at all. Every second of it was absolutely terrifying, and I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I felt scared. I felt unsafe. I felt like my privacy was invaded, and it really put a damper on my first excitement about living in the city. It also massively changed the way I talk to people and the way I walk around town. 2. It doesn't matter how many times your mother told you to be polite and quiet. It's just not always the solution. If you don't feel safe, or if you don't want something, don't agree to it just for the sake of politeness. Being polite doesn't mean letting some stranger overstep your boundaries and make you feel uncomfortable. And if you can't make it out of the situation quietly, don't be afraid to raise your voice and get attention this way, or by asking others for help. Don't be afraid you could make it uncomfortable for someone by doing this. Most people are nice and will actually help you. Wrong politeness and silence won't save you, but Natalie from behind the counter in a bookstore and a random intimidating guy on his way home most definitely will. Natalie and the bearded guy, if you're out there, you're heroes, and I adore you. Nobody, especially not some stranger, is entitled to your attention. If you don't want to talk to them, don't effing talk to them, no matter how much they try to push or convince you. Even if it hurts their feelings or they say you will change your mind about them, in this case, there is no trying to say no. There is only saying no. Don't make the same mistakes I made when I was 19 and so ridiculously naive that I was probably the wet dream of a serial killer or abductor. Treat people with respect, but also treat yourself and your own feelings, boundaries, and concerns with respect. 4. One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus is an insanely good book, and everyone should read it. Natalie says so too. Now that I no longer joke about this, it actually really makes me uncomfortable thinking about it, but I'm also sort of glad this happened to raise my awareness in those situations, and that, in the end, nothing more serious happened. Story 3 by Reddit user Daddy Chells. My native language is not English, so please bear with me. Also, I changed the guy's name for privacy reasons. Okay, so this story happened like 2 years ago. For a little background, I have autism, and when I turned 18, my mum told me she couldn't take care of me anymore, so she sent me to a sort of group home for people with autism. It was a tiny one-story building with about 8 apartments for each person. My first day there, it was pretty clear that I was one of the high-functioning people there, and it seemed I was the youngest too. My mum stayed with me for the first night to help me get settled, and 2 guys who lived there kept walking up to my door and just looking. Me being used to being around socially awkward people, like myself, didn't really think much of it, although I really hated the attention. I didn't want to talk to them, and after about 2 hours, they gave up. My mum said they were sweet and just curious as to who was moving in, but I wasn't in the mood to socialize. Fast forward to me living there a couple of weeks. I'm sitting in my very tiny living room watching TV when I see a shadow outside my window. My window was placed beside the main entrance, so I could always hear and see people walking by. My blinds were closed, but I could see the shadow, since the main entrance had lights on all night. So, I started looking away from the TV, just looking at the shadow by the window. The person stood there for about 5 minutes, then walked away. Or so I thought. Then, I saw the shadow sort of duck behind a wall, but still try to look into my window. And that was when I kind of got freaked out. The next day, I tell the people working in the group home, and they're like, "Oh, it's probably just Eric. He does that sometimes." And I'm sort of like, well, I would appreciate it if he didn't, because it freaks me out. They just said something along the lines that they would talk to him about it, and I agreed. Fast forward again to having been there for months. It's a daily occurrence that this guy Eric walks past my front door and front windows, about 40 times a day, walking past 4 times in 4 minutes. My door is made of glass, so again, he can see through. Sometimes I walk out from my living room, and I see Eric just standing at my door staring at me. It's the most unsettling thing. At this point, I've told the staff multiple times, but they say they can't really do anything and that he is harmless. Right. At one point, though, Eric is gone, and I'm relieved to finally being comfortable with having my blinds up and walking around in my own apartment. So probably a year into living there, maybe less, I get really depressed. It wasn't the best place to live, and I've never felt so lonely in my life. I end up attempting suicide, and they put me in a mental hospital for a couple of days so I can be watched. Well, guess who's there too? Fucking Eric. He notices me straight away, and every time a nurse tries to walk into my room, he stands by the door staring at me. They have to keep telling him to go away. One time, I had to wash my clothes with one of the nurses, and he followed us yelling so everyone could hear it. "Hey, that girl lives where I live. Hi, Michelle. Her name is Michelle." And being the type of person that hates attention, I just start walking faster until the nurses can get hold of him. So, at this point, I'm actually in an okay mental state. Still not the best to live with neglectant staff and shitty people around me. Eric is back too at one point, and honestly, I haven't been outside because I'm afraid I'll run into him. His apartment isn't even on my side, so it makes no sense why he is there all the time. I've noticed it's been quiet for a while, so I decide it's safe to go down to the basement with my laundry. I turn the corner, and boom, almost bumped into him. I kind of freaked out, but I remembered he is still just a person, and I politely gave him a smile and say, "Hi." He doesn't say anything. He just stares. I then walk past him on my way to the basement. I look back, and this fucker is following me now. He actually turned around to follow me. I start walking faster, and I thank God I have the key for the basement ready. I open the door and shut it quickly so that I know it's locked. I walk into the laundry room with my laundry, and then I hear the door open. I froze. Was he going to kill me? I mean, I didn't even know the guy or what he was capable of. 3 minutes go by, and I finally get the courage to peek out from the room. The door is open, but he is nowhere to be seen. It seems he is gone. It scared the lifeless crap out of me, so I hurried up and put my clothes in the washing machine and hurried back up to my apartment. Again, I speak to the staff, and this one guy is actually really helpful. He is the first to take me serious and says they need to fix it. I know that they talked to him about it, and also about standing by my window. But do you think he listened? To describe Eric, I would say a very tall guy. I couldn't tell if he was skinny or chubby because he was always wearing a big green jacket. He had glasses, was hunched over, sort of, and had long dark greasy hair. So yeah, basically nightmare fuel to any girl. Okay, I know I sound like an asshole, but I'm a very tiny girl, and I know if he tried anything, I wouldn't stand a chance. So now it's the norm again to see him at my window. Although, when the staff tells him to stop, he just laughs very childlike. He thought it was funny. It annoyed the shit out of me because I went from being scared to being super angry. I know he had issues, but damn, I had issues too, and he wasn't helping with my anxiety. He actually made it worse. I told the staff that if he ever tried anything, I would beat the living shit out of him. Aggressive, I know. I was short, yes, but I was angry too. They told me that that wasn't allowed, and I reminded them that him looking into my windows and following me around wasn't allowed either. They agreed, but told me there was nothing they could do. I seriously considered calling the police at this point. The last thing he did that really made me angry was he walked past my door and windows many times, as always. But then I realized he was gone. I sighed in relief, but I still had that feeling of being watched. My eye caught movement outside, and this dude was hiding behind a tree outside my apartment watching me. When he saw me, he grinned and moved closer. I walked into the living room not wanting to deal with this shit and called my boyfriend. My boyfriend stayed at my apartment pretty much every day from now on, and he stopped for a while. I think Eric even asked the staff if that was my boyfriend, and they told him it was. He still walked past our door sometimes, but not as often and not as creepily. Thankfully, we moved out about a year later, and I haven't seen him since. But it made me very cautious and very dependent on my boyfriend. I know he probably didn't have any bad intentions, but it really fucked up my mental state, and it really scared me. Thank you for watching and/or listening to this video. Again, if you enjoyed it, please go ahead and hit the like button, and if you don't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and select the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. Also, please leave a comment on this video letting me know what you thought of it. Comments really help with the YouTube algorithm and will really help my channel to grow. If you have a story you would like me to narrate, please email it to me at stories@daredeverall.com. I'm now over 50,000 subscribers to this channel, so I'm halfway to my next major milestone. Thank you to everyone who is continuing to subscribe to this channel and contributing to its growth by liking videos and leaving comments. Once I get to 100,000 subscribers, my plan is to reward you all with an epic video with over 3 hours of original content. If that is the sort of thing you want to hear, then please help keeping this channel to grow. If you want to support my channel even further, there are a number of ways you can do so. You can consider leaving me a tip for this video via my PayPal, link is included in the description. Check out my Teespring store and consider purchasing one of my shirt designs. Or head over to Audible, where there is a book, Punch by J.R. Park, that I narrated. I do get a small royalty if you decide to purchase that. Thanks again.